Erotes, Section 4. Intramezzo. A mimetic rivalry.
Look, Eros. There's the moon.
Nonsense.
I see it.
Well, you're a lunar chick. Dragged by the tides, always transitioning, waxing, and waning.
What do you see then?
How gently in the silence, Anteros, my goats go up the bank. They crop a grass that's yellow where the sun's out, and black where the clouds drag their shadows. Have you noticed how steadily, yet with what a slanting eye they graze?
As if they thought of other things. What say you, Eros? Do they only question where next to pull? Or do their far minds draw them thus vaguely north of west and south of east?
One cannot say. The male goat wears his burdocks as if they were a garland. Have you noticed? Purple and white, and drinks the bitten grass as if it were a wine.
I've noticed that. What say you, Eros? Shall we make a song about a goat that thought himself a goat herd?
Why, yes. But just a minute. All the water's on your side of the screen and the goats are getting thirsty. I hadn't thought of that.
Oh, hadn't you?
Why, what do you mean?
What do I mean? I mean that I can play a game as well as you can. And if the pool's on my side, it's on my side, that's all.
You mean you'd let the goats go thirsty?
Well, they're not my goats. My sheep have water enough.
Your sheep? You're mad to call them yours, mine. They're all one flock. You can't mean to keep the water from them just because they happen to be grazing over there instead of over here when they set up the screens?
Oh, can't I? Wait and see. If you try to lead them over here, you'll wish you hadn't.
I wonder how it happens all the water's on his side. I'll say you had an eye out for lots of little things, my innocent friend. When I said, let's make a song, and you said, I know a game worth two of that. You know, I think you must be getting old or fat or something. Stupid anyway. Can't you put on some other kind of collar?
You know as well as I do. I never thought anything of the kind. Don't you?
I do not.
Don't you?
Oh, I suppose so. Let's drop this, what do you say? It's only a game, you know. We seem to be forgetting it's only a game. A pretty serious game it's getting to be when one of us is willing to let the other go thirsty for the sake of it.
I know it, but how do I know this isn't a trick to water your goat and get the laugh on me?
You can't know. That's the difficult thing about it, of course. You can't be sure. You have to take my word for it. And I know just how you feel. But one of us has to take a risk. Or else, why, don't you see? The game goes on forever. It's terrible when you stop to think about it. For the first time, I feel the screen is actually a screen. A thing come up between us, shutting you away from me. I do not know you anymore.
No, don't say that. Oh, I'm willing to drop it all if you will. Come on over and water your goat. It's an ugly game. I hated it from the start. But how did it start?
I do not know. I do not know. I think I'm afraid of you. You're a stranger. I never laid eyes on you before. Come over and water my goat, indeed. They'll be more thirsty than they are now before I bring them over to your land and have you mixing them up with yours and calling them yours and trying to keep them.
Eros, my friend, I have no goat or need for any. I have only sweet sheep already full of milk and water and golden honey. It would just be a service of charity to a neighbor for which I'd only ask one gift in return.
Bartering, eh? I've got much to barter with over here. Yes. An acorn string. Oh, that's perfect. I'll give you all the water that you want for that one acorn necklace. Oh, and a song. Sing me an old song, Grumpy Arrows, something I can remember-os. Antros, your mind is made of crumbs, like in a scallop of oysters. First a layer of crumbs, then an oystery taste, then another layer of crumbs. Arrows, yoo-hoo, listen, won't you? I want to tell you something. Hush, be off. Go back to your nap, I tell you.
Arrows, listen. If you don't want your goats, give them to me.
Come, what do you take me for? A fool? I have a lot of thinking to do. And while I'm thinking, the goat might just as well be over here as over there.
But they will die. Maybe I have some acorns on my side. Maybe. Oh. Maybe not. I find no acorns, but I wonder what the root of the strange weed is. I've seen sheep die, with half the stalk still drooping out of their mouths. 'Twould be a speedy remedy, I should think, for a festered pride and a feverish ambition. It does have a curious root. I think I'll hack it into little pieces and mix it in with the water for arrows. A beautiful boy with a bottle in his hand. 'Tis I. Andros's first vision of tragedy comes when he looks into the pool, and seeing the familiar reflection, he's struck by the unfamiliarity of one aspect of it, the poisonous root. For the first time, he realizes this man who he's about to kill with poisoned water, his most beloved friend, is none other than Eros himself. 'Tis I. Hello? What are you doing, Antros? Searching for acorns.
I'll give you all the acorns you want. And you'll give me a jar of wateros if you don't want too many, that is to say.
Oh, so you've changed your mind. It's different, isn't it, when you want to drink yourself?
Oh, of course it is. Antros, give me the water, and I'll give you these acorns. And bring it back.
I don't believe he'll notice. He's too thirsty. He'll gulp it down, and he'll never notice. Oh, Eros! Here's your bottle of wateros.
I'll give you my necklace, my friend. Come closeros. Here it is. You've poisoned me in earnest. I feel so cold. This is a very silly game. Why do we play it? Let's not play this game a minute more. Let's make a little solo. But a goat. I'm going past the screen.
Act 6. From pastoral cryptorium to transparent vomitorium.
Everything begins with a garden. Theater begins not with Adam and Eve, but with the Garden of Adonis, which is pre-temporality marked as youth, a youth we wish to ravish and control and possess, but that we cannot have wholly without losing it, since its state is a state of partiality, as young and not old, and it must remain this way. And thus Adonis must die young, so that he can be frozen immortally as a youthful mortal. And we pledge fidelity to the fact that he must die young by having ritual harvests that celebrate the transience of existence. However, there is in all this the desire still to reclaim him through his partiality, as he did inspire the hatred of Venus, who vowed to make all love unrequited, all love partial, and yet we attempt to recontrol this partiality through these rituals, and the way we control it has to do with the minor difference of theater ritual, either emphasizing the centrality of his remains or their dispersion, the excess or their containment. It's all a matter of fidelity. If we respect his remains as fragments, or we make them into a totality, if we worship him as part of a pantheon, as a singular entity above all else, in which case Adonis becomes Adonai. To this day, ritual does not need an inaugural act, or even the pretense that there is a reclamation of lost presence, since the myth of Adonis is about the presence of Adonis always already being fleeting. The contested values, therefore, are rarely original versus inauthentic, but rather faithful commitment versus bad faith, smart deconstruction versus corny reconstruction, the performative renewal of a vow or an arbitrary simulation. So theater is always acting as if there was a first time and that we could get back to that first time. It doesn't so much matter if there was or wasn't. But, of course, this first time is always included in every subsequent time as the negative condition, and therefore it is even included in what we call the first time, since the first time is only ever a delay or a deferral of a first time that is inexistent or that happened in the primal scene, which is to say, it did not happen with us there. It is what we witnessed, what we saw, the monstrosity of the first ritual act, which was the consummation which birthed us. And this is why therapy relays this theatrical process, but the catharsis that it ends in is not an actual recollection of the primordial terror, but is a recollection of the fact that we cannot recollect that primary terror, that we are blocked, that we are blinded. And of course, this is part of the terror of Cupid's blindness, the terror of Pan's freakishness, that is to say, the terror of the primal scene, which is the first scene, as they say, but it's a scene that never really happened in our psyche. We never saw it, of course. And yet, there is a catharsis that comes from the lack of catharsis, or a kind of catharsis that comes from the alienation and the deferral, which removes us from the pastoral and the paradisal. And this is why the saint of theater for the Christians is Saint Genesius, who, in mocking the baptism, because he was a pagan and he was mocking the Christians, in his parody of a miracle play, he actually awakes to the Holy Spirit enters him, and he is truly baptized. So this is the kind of paradox by which one must alienate oneself from the material in order then to be stricken by the material in an actual, genuine revelation. So this impulse to see the primal scene as if we could see it is really an alienating, parodic impulse, an impulse for something that cannot happen, an impossible impulse, and yet when we consistently make and enact this drive, we also inaugurate a kind of new kind of experiencing, which is to say the experiencing of lack and deficiency, which is the experience of eros. So to have the experience of eros, we must, of course, search for the totality, which we will not find, whether we're searching for the primal scene, or we're searching for the inaugural conditions of theater, whether we think that was a roving ritual in the forest, or we think it was a round Colosseum. Because there was no round Colosseum, it was always a semicircle, which is to say the circle is always divided, and that's what the dividing line is, and that's what the curtain is, and that's what Revelation implies, that one can obliterate this dividing line between the audience and the actors, between the gods and men, between the cave and the sunlight. But of course, we cannot split the circle in half or unify the circle, because it is always both to us. We always have the split and the totality. And that is what you discover as you try and take on a virtual reality or a 360-degree tour of an artist's studio in order to better understand the artist, when that might help you understand the artist, but it would be better probably to stare at a blank wall, because it is the blankness and the lack and the deprivation inside the soul that, of course, inaugurates the artistic temperament. Now, even as I say this, you may think I'm saying, well, now we're all bankrupt, we have no attention span, and we're fed spectacle. And this is, again, to repeat, as we must, if we are erotic beings, an idea that there was an earlier time when we were more contemplative, when we would really worship the art and we really thought. And this is, again, to repeat the same mistake, but we have to keep repeating this mistake, to be erotic. The erotic division that matters here, that matters in our course today, our discourse, our intercourse, is, of course, the division between alienation, which is the theatrical, which is aware of the frame and the dividing line, and immersiveness, which tries to obliterate the dividing line, have the totality, which I call theatery-ness. So we have theatery immersion and theatrical alienation. The immersion and the theatrical are in a dialectical opposition to each other, which means that they are sometimes occurring together and sometimes in strict negation of one another, and often they appear in a kind of Oedipal way, in terms of intergenerations, of different kinds of theatrical revolution, insensibility. For instance, we have Bertolt Brecht, who is, of course, the most theatrical, who wants us always to have the placard and the frame and the warning and the tableau that is self-conscious, that is self-aware, that reminds you of the conditions of alienation in society, and all sorts of things like this. And then his son, Stefan Brecht, revolutionizes theater in the opposite direction, wanting the sort of ridiculous, spectacular theater of camp and queerness, which celebrates the spectacle, the artifice, and doesn't give you these warning labels. It doesn't remind you necessarily throughout the whole process of the different economic divides, but actually sucks you in, almost like a Hollywood movie, into the world of artifice. The popularity of Caravaggio is that he gives us the best of both worlds, in the sense that we are both immersed through the darkness to an actual naturalistic scene, which is believable, which is therefore theatery. On the other hand, there's a theatrical way in which we are bounced out of the scene because we are made aware of the model's relationship to the economy of the artist, and so on. So while Caravaggio may be a kind of unifying principle for people like Michael Fried, who need to have a kind of special balance between the theatrical and the theatery, we must remember that Caravaggio is also always a danger, because he endangers us with the bringing back the stigmas of each of these modes of thinking. In particular, the stigma of the model as being maybe a thief or a degenerate, or the artist being maybe a thief or a degenerate, And this is why when we have the sort of saint and the martyr of theater, we have to think also of the saint or the martyr as an actor, as a liar, as a hypocrite, as an artist, as conceited, as pretentious, and as a prostitute in many ways. And this is exactly how the secular age venerates the actor who gives his life to the role, and is therefore a martyr who really inspires revelation despite dealing merely with artifice. Heath Ledger being the greatest example of this, dealing with a comic book character, dealing with a jester, and yet there's pathos, there's depth, there's one gives one's full life to the method, one dies for the role, etc., etc. But this begins really with Sartre, who, on a play on the name of Saint Genesius, dubs Genet a saint in Saint Genet. Genet is made a saint because he is a liar and a thief and abject and erotic, and haunts, in a way, the different thresholds and vomitoriums and the different underground spaces, and also makes us aware of course, as Brecht would enjoy, and of course Sartre as well, the alienation of existence. Saint Genet is an interesting case because Genet gives us very Brechtian plays with very alienating conceits in which one is always aware of the role of the prostitute and the pimp and the master and the slave and so on, and it is always enacted in this way. And yet Sartre wants to think of Genet as also being the purest actor in the sense of the act as a true gesture of authentic commitment and ethical commitment to the world and to existence. And in this way, he is contrasting Genet to the waiter, to the bumbling fool, to the automaton, which Sartre despises, which he thinks of as a kind of fake artifice and a bad acting in daily life. To be, of course, truly dialectical about this, we would have to see that this waiter is always, of course, just in that position to make ends meet because he probably is an actor, and that we all fluctuate between different kinds of bad faith acting and good faith acting. But in any case, it's very split for Sartre, and it returns us to this very split in Eros between the fake and the real versions of Eros. The gesture of authenticity and nobility and a kind of jesting, mechanical, lewd Cupid. Genet resolves this problem for Sartre because in a world without God, one would think we would lose the kind of ethical commitment that we discussed earlier with Levinas, but Genet shows us in a world of filth and abjection, nonetheless one can have an intense commitment to existence and to art and to authenticity. And this sort of sets up the idea of the queer, whether they're a performer or an artist or a faker or a thief of some kind, as actually being the most authentic and pure martyr figure, whose performative gestures actually put shame to the normative conceits that most people use, because although they render sex and other forms of signification arbitrary, they do not do this in an arbitrary manner. They have a very serious commitment and goal, which makes them the new moralists after the death of God.
I love the story of Saint Genet. He has the most beautiful soul. Corel is the vomitorium of dreams. There are no beautiful souls, only beautiful bodies, and those fade fast. And Sartre's valorization of Genet is misguided, since it stems from a false dichotomy, which we still suffer under. The play acting that Sartre disavows is then disavowed again by those who follow J.L. Austin's notion that stage acting is hollow, while performative acts do something. Then queer theory begins to differentiate between mere play and authentic acts, and the whole thing is just an eternal return of the anti-theatrical prejudice, which is doubly limiting, since on the one side are those who are anti-theatricality, and on the other are those who are anti-theatery. I think we're over that false dichotomy. I'm both real and unreal, and I like it that way. But others don't, and I'll tell you why. Queerness poses two alleged threats. The first is the slippery slope of authenticity, and the second is the slippery slope of inauthenticity. That is because queerness presents us with two different origin stories, that of Rousseau and that of RuPaul. Rousseau says we were born free and have been enchained by arbitrary dictates, but we can be freed by a return to nature. A second naivete of phenomenological purity. This is the green version of queerness. RuPaul says we were born in a fallen state, wherein everything is drag and arbitrary, so there was no return to a blank state, only competition and aesthetic hierarchy. This is coupled with a second split between the RuPaulines, who want perpetual transitions and unfixing of all categories, and the Rousseauvians, who want perpetual legislation of new categories. RuPaul is the comic, and Rousseau is the tragic view. There are two hatreds of the saint of theater, which makes him a double martyr. The martyr is faithful to the truth and at odds with society, so the tragic martyr Genesius is at odds because he believes there to be an extra-theatrical truth that cannot be reduced to pagan simulated rituals, anti-theater, anti-given, automated, indifferent, indistinct gestures in favor of theatrical reflexive awareness of authentic, singular, unitary truth. Much like how the original actress who played Tinkerbell came to actually believe in the magic of God and became a nun. The comic martyr who is at odds because he believes that metaphysical truths are accessible only through parody and simulated ritual, through the theatery, parodic, satirical, masquerade analogy amped up ad infinitum. You can never concretely reach the image of God, only by inversion, paradox, surprise. So delay infinitely, heighten contradictions. Perhaps this is atheism, perhaps negative theology. Questioning is the heart of queerness, which is one giant form of humanistic sociality. Yes, but you aren't really questioning anything. You've turned interminable questioning into a terminal degree. You've turned questioning into answering. Questioning should be infinite and divide one from all sociality.
Eris and Harmonia. Both of your positions are dogmatically enforced because they've become secondary sexual characteristics. The kind that you start off a date with. Tell me about yourself. Find yourself a trustworthy mate. Of course, the tragic farce of it is that these dogmas do not produce trustworthiness, but only betrayal of the greatest kind, because each side continuously exceeds the other in its game of blackmail, and trust could only be produced where there was a common ground between the positions. There is no common ground between you two, between virtue and vice, dysphoria and euphoria, and yet, in truth, they are codependent. They are merely stages in each other's developments, which leads to the larger point, which is that in a culture where everything is decrypted and shared, the Dionysian impulse has culminated in its Apollonian inversion of total control. This is a problem not because the impulse is bad, but because the culmination of the impulse destroys the impulse. The erotic desire to rip down the curtain and unveil the nude is destroyed, and thus we are here, in the Vomitorium.
Erotes, Section 5. Profane Eros, Song Cycle. A pastoral, heroic.
Something sweet is the whisper of the pine, that makes her music by yonder springs. And sweet no less, good goatherd Eros, the melody of your pipe, god of the he-goats. Before the nymphs I pray you, Master Satyr, come now and sit ye down here by this shelving bank and these brush tamarisks, and play me a tune. I'll keep your goats the while.
But for singing, you, Anteros, used to sing the affliction of Onkos as well as any man. You're no prentice in the art of country music, so let's sing a contest, you and I. If you sing that song that you sang that day we had that match with Chromis, I'll not only grant you 3 milkings of a twinner goat, that for all her 2 young yields 2 pailfuls, but I'll give you a fine great mazer to boot, well scoured with sweet beeswax, and 2 lugs brand spankin' new, and the smack of a graver upon it yet. The prize, according to Phaedrus, goes to the one who says the same thing in a different way. In other words, to the best rhetorician. Let the harvest ballad contest commence, and this time the better brother will truly be known.
Saint Sebastian. I would come in a shirt of hair. I would come with a lamp in the night and sit at the foot of your stair. I would flog myself until I bled, and after hour on hour of prayer and torture and delight, until my blood should ring the lamp and glisten in the light, I should arise your neophyte, and then put out the light to follow where you lead, to follow where your feet are white, in the darkness toward your bed, and where your gown is white, and against your gown your braided hair. Then you would take me in. Because I was hideous in your sight, you would take me in without shame, because I should be dead, and when the morning came, between your breaths should lie my head. I think that at last you would understand. There would be nothing more to say. You would love me because I should have strangled you, and because of my infamy. And I should love you the more because I mangled you, and because you were no longer beautiful to anyone but me. I stood at the coast and spoke with the surf blah blah, behind me the ruins of Europe. The bells rang in the state funeral, murderer and widow a pair, the council in goose step behind the coffin of the high cadaver, howling in poorly paid grief. Whose is the corpse in the corpse train? For whom is heard this lamenting strain? I stopped the funeral train, pried open the casket with my sword, which broke the blade. With the blunt remainder I succeeded and distributed my dead maker. Flesh and flesh gladly joined together. Before the surrounding guise of misery, the grief turned to rejoicing, the rejoicing into smacking. On top of the empty casket, the murderer mounted the widow. I laid on the ground and heard the world turning her rounds in step with the decay. I, the prince-killing king, oh, my people, what have I done unto thee? Like a hunchback, I drag my heavy brain. Something is rotten in this age of hope. What are you waiting for? The cocks have been slaughtered. Mourning is canceled. Enter Horatio, confidant of my thoughts, so full of blood, since morning is curtained by an empty sky. Horatio, do you know me? Are you my friend, Horatio? Well, if you know me, how can you be my friend? Do you want to play Polonius, who wants to sleep with his daughter Ophelia? She comes on her cue line. See how she shakes her ass, a tragic role. Horatio, Polonius. Ha! I knew you were an actor. I am too. I play Hamlet and Ophelia. Exit Polonius, my brother the bride. His breasts a bed of roses, his womb a nest of snakes. Have you forgotten your text, brother? I'll prompt. Wash the murder off my face! Wash the murder off your face, my prince, and make eyes at the new Denmark. I'll make you into a virgin again, brother, so that we can have a bloody wedding. Now, I tie your hands behind your back with your bridal veil, since I'm disgusted by your embrace. Now I tear apart your wedding dress. Now you must scream. Now I smear the rags off your wedding dress with the earth my father has become, with the rags your face, your belly, your breasts. I want to stuff the corpse in the toilet so that the palace chokes in kingly shit. Then let me eat your heart, Ophelia, which cries my tears. Behind me, the set is being generated by people. My drama doesn't interest. For people, it doesn't concern. It doesn't interest me anymore either. I won't play along anymore. Shaken by fright and contempt, I see myself in the oncoming mass, foaming at the mouth, shaking my fist at myself. I am the typewriter. I tie the noose when the ringleaders are hanged. I pull away the stool. I break my own neck. I am the databank, bleeding in the crowd, breathing again behind the double doors, secreting word slime into the soundproof speech, bubble over the battle. My drama didn't happen. The script has been lost. The actors hung up their faces on the nails in the dressing room. In his box, the prompter festers. The stuffed corpses in the house don't move a hand. I go home and kill time. At one, with my undivided self, I break open my sealed up flesh. I want to live in my veins, in the marrow of my bones, in the labyrinth of my skull. I retreat into my intestines. I take a seat in my shit, my blood. Somewhere bodies are being broken so I can live in my shit. Somewhere bodies are open so I can be alone with my blood. My thoughts are lesions in my brain. My brain is a scar. I want to be a machine, arms to grab legs, to go no pain, no thoughts.
Erotes Section 6, Sacred Anteros Song Cycle, a cornucopia.
Tender shepherd, tender shepherd, let me help you count your sheep. 1 in the meadow, 2 in the garden, 3 in the nursery, fast asleep. Little lamb, little lamb, little lamb, my birthday is here at last. Little lamb, my birthday goes by so fast. Little cat, oh, why do you look so blue? Did somebody paint you like that? Or is it your birthday too? Little fish, do you think I'll get my wish? Little lamb, I wonder how old I am. I wonder how old I am. Little lamb. The lamb. Little lamb who may be, dost the stream and o'er the mead, gave thee clothing of delight, softest clothing, woolly bright, gave thee such a tender voice, making all the vales rejoice. Little lamb, who made thee? Dost thou know who made thee? He is called by thy name, for he calls himself a lamb. He is meek and he is mild. He became a little child. I a child and thou a lamb. We are called by his name. Little lamb, God bless thee. Little lamb, God bless thee. I am an Ophelia machine, the one the river didn't keep. Yesterday I stopped killing myself. I smashed the instruments of my imprisonment, the chair, the table, the bed. I destroy the battlefield that was my home. I rip open the doors so the wind can come in and the cries of the world. I smash the window. With my bloody hands, I tear the photographs of the men I loved, who used me on the bed, on the table, on the floor. I unearth the clock that was my heart from my breast. I go on to the street dressed in my blood. I reject all the semen that I received. Down with the joy of submission. Long live hate, contempt, rebellion, death. When I walk through your bedrooms carrying butcher knives, you'll know the truth. Do you want to eat my heart, Hamlet?
Say that last line again, but look more directly at anything.
Do you want to eat my heart, Hamlet?
Your songs move me to tears, dear brother. Let us call our contests a draw and affirm each other mutually. We both sing so well the same song in many different manners. And in valediction, I sing now my song to the greatest virtue of virtues, besides public opinion. The virtue named pride.
Only if you must.
I must. It is our truth. Freaks of fashion. My heart is like a singing bird whose nest is in a watered shoot. My heart is like an apple tree whose boughs are bent with thick-set fruit. My heart is like a rainbow shell that paddles in a halcyon sea. My heart is gladder than all these because my love has come to me. Hang down my cape with purple dyes and peacocks with 100 eyes. Work it in gold and silver grates because my pride's so great. Gay papas and grave mamas teach the knowledge-thirsty nestlings. Robin says a scarlet waistcoat will be all the wear. Snug and also cheerful looking for the frostiest air. Comfortable for the chest too when one comes to plume and pear. Flushing salmon, flushing sulfur. Ah! Ah! Ah!
Apologia. Last tape. Last unbinding. Last rewinding. Last purge. A counter castrato. La la. Bye.
Every time we say goodbye, I die a little. Every time we say goodbye, I die a little. Every time we say goodbye, I wonder what a little. Why about it. I can hear a lark somewhere. When you're near, there's a gentle air of spring about it. I can hear a lark somewhere begin to sing about it. There's no love song finer, but how strange the change from major to Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. After all that, another face? Why won't you look at me?
I am looking at you.
Yeah, but I'm over here. Can't you see me?
Listen, sweetheart. If I could see you, I wouldn't be working here.
What do you see?
I see what you see. An ambiguous heartthrob.
Oh, I see.
Do you mind if I sit down? Do you mind if I sit down?
No.
Thanks. Legs got a little tired from standing all the time. Well, this whole thing must seem kind of strange to you, huh? You realize that I can't see you, even though you can see me? Well, that takes a little getting used to. Oh well. Are you looking at my face now? Oh God, it doesn't matter. If,
I want to talk to you.
is there something you want to tell me? You can tell me. I can keep a secret.
Is that all you want to do, is just talk?
Well, yeah. Yeah, mostly.
What else do you do? Why are you laughing?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So, what else do you do?
Nothing, really. Oh well. We're not allowed to see the customers out of here.
When do you see them? Do you go home with them?
No, sir, we don't. We're not allowed to have any outside relationships with customers.
Yeah, but you can really see them if you want to, can't you? I mean, You can go home with them if you want to. All these places say that. I mean, how much extra money do you make? How much money do you make on the side?
I'm sorry. Sir, I think you'll maybe want to talk to one of the other girls. I'll see if I can find one for
No,
you.
no. No! Please don't go.
I just don't think I'm the one you want to talk to.
Oh, please don't go. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
You know, I know how hard it is to talk to strangers sometimes. Just relax. Relax and tell me what's on your mind. I'll listen to you. I don't mind listening. I do it all the time.
The art of sinking isn't hard to master. I've fallen into bounded space and been thrown into time as a Promethean theatrical punishment. But Adonis waits on the wings, nude and clothed, and Ganymede above will soon bring the Deus Ex Machina moment of divine salvation to rescue me from my failed plummet into the shallows of ready-made, ridiculous theater. Take the wings from this autonomous labyrinth and lift me from the bathos. Once I find my sculptural perfection, I must tie him down so that he doesn't run off again. Take these wings and help me climax.
I need no prosthetic wings. Throw them to the obscene wings of the stage and endure the horizon without redemption.
But aren't you the sweet arrows who ate the grapes?
No, I'm the bitter one who hid always behind the green curtain, the obscene remainder of your erotic method.
Aren't you the angel who, suspended by ropes, suspended disbelief and bracketed critical thoughts so that we could have a second naive virgin experience of things?